Hi, this is Horace Cordier, and I'm here on behalf of Rock Shop Pop, and we are here. I'm here with my friend John, and we're here to review the new Blue Oyster Cult album, The Symbol Remains, which came out last Friday, October 9th. John, this is my friend John, and he's as big a BOC fan as I am, so we're a pretty good place to discuss this record. John, how much time have you had with the record? I've been able to listen to it probably 6 or 7 times, so I feel pretty familiar with it. But with Blue Oyster Cult, I found in general, things take a little while to totally settle. But how much time have you had with the record at this point?
You know, it's funny you say that because I've probably heard it about the same amount of times as you have, about half a dozen times. And there are certain songs that are starting to grow on me. And the album is sort of really, it's a real grower. It's really improved in my estimation the more I listen to it. So I'm really excited to talk about it today.
Yes, I feel the same way. As a point of knowledge for everyone, this is the first Blue Oyster Cult album in 19 years. And a lot has happened to this band since Curse of the Hidden Mirror, which came out 19 years ago. They have been touring pretty much nonstop, off and on, since that album was released. But the trickle of new material has been extremely limited. So this is a huge deal. And honestly, with these legacy acts that are now approaching sort of the twilights of their careers, could very well be the last Blue Oyster Cult album. So let's dive into the actual contents of the record. And for people that haven't been following Blue Oyster Cult as closely as we have, at this point, you have 2 original members who are Eric Bloom on guitar and vocals, and Buck Dharma, the lead guitarist, who's been with the band since the very beginning. And we have Jules Rodino. And who's the drummer?
That's the drummer.
Jules Rodino is on drums, and we have
Danny Miranda on bass. Yeah, and Richie Castellano on guitars, keyboards,
and Danny Miranda's on bass.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so this is the current lineup, and this lineup has been touring for decades. I think they've been together over 10 years. And the first thing that I'm going to say about this record, the playing is extremely tight. You can tell that these guys have been playing live, because we're going to get to the songwriting in 2 seconds. But right off the bat, I have to tell you, I was really impressed with the level of playing on this in a couple of key areas. I think the drummer is absolutely fantastic. And Buck is really, I do believe, we use this word, I think, much too often, but it definitely applies to Buck. Buck is truly one of the most underrated classic rock guitarists. He is absolutely up there with the Jimmy Pages, the Michael Schenkers, all those guys. He's a phenomenal guitarist, and he plays beautifully on this record. And Eric sounds great. And, listen, as we age, the vocals are often the thing that you worry about the most. And Eric just sounds great on the record.
Well, yeah, I mean, really for the last, as you say, more than a decade, Blue Oyster Cult have been, as they call it, on tour forever. So they have a very rigorous touring schedule. And what you're saying about the playing on this record, I mean, they really are like a road-tested band, and the sort of the synergy that you get with all the members, I think, is really apparent when you listen to this record.
Absolutely, you don't get the kind of tightness in the playing that you hear on this record without people that know each other like that. So let's dive into the songs. And I will say right off the bat, I have 2 absolute favorites on the album, and I think we agree on a couple. But I'm very enamored of a song called The Alchemist, which is what I consider to be Blue Oyster Cult's sort of Vengeance the Pact Black Blade 2020, because it's a sort of epic, really on the more metal end. So this is the more like grandiose, and it's sort of an epic tale of vengeance and dead kings, and it's very wizards and warlocks, and it's just fantastic. And it also has a video, which is very entertaining, so you should check that out on YouTube. But that's one of my favorites, and the other is an extremely quirky, just wonderful Buck Dharma song called Florida Man, which is just as weird as you would imagine. So I know John is a huge fan of Florida Man, so I'm going to let John talk about Florida Man.
Yeah, well, I mean, you just named my 2 favorite songs on the album, and it's so cool that one features Eric Bloom, The Alchemist, and it's really heavy. Yes. And the other one is a Buck Dharma song, and it's kind of his sort of light melodic pop, right? Although quirky. Cool. And the thing about just to add on to The Alchemist, I love the middle break, which sort of reminds me of sort of like Iron Maiden or something. I mean, it's a really cool.
Yeah, they're really trying to do something that's it's the whole thing is beautifully hyper dramatic. it's very, you know.
Yeah,
If you see the
and
video,
Richie
then you see exactly what we're talking about.
Richie Castellano wrote that one. So big props to him for writing that. And also speaking of writing,
I didn't check the credits on that. That's amazing.
yeah. Speaking of writing, I love Shirley's lyric. John Shirley's lyrics on Florida Man are fantastic. Shirley has basically taken up the mantle of BOC lyricist, where in the past you used to have Sandy Pearlman, right, and Patti Smith, and you'd have this sort of. They drew from a lot of writers, right, and poets and critics to sort of contribute lyrics to them. And Shirley has really been their lyric man, and I think he has a couple of credits on this album. But this tune, Florida Man, which sort of like it imagines sort of like a seminal curse that's being sort of carried down from generations to generations.
And it opens with a great lyric about the conquistadors.
Yeah,
and without getting into anything political, but just news in general, we know that a lot of very strange things happen in Florida. It's probably like the craziest state in America. And yet it's perfect fodder for Blue Oyster Cult, who've always had that sort of mystical, quirky. And as for the music, it is sort of like if Harvest Moon was a little more twisted.
Yeah, it's definitely the Harvest Moon of this record, for sure.
And one of the other interesting things about the record is that Richie Castellano has been sort of brought in as the third vocalist. So they have actually tried to write some songs for him. And I'm not sure we agree on this one, but I do actually like Tainted Blood. I think it's like an effective AOR track. It just takes a little getting used to, because I'm used to, honestly, all of the classic BOC voices and, people that are no longer in the band, like Al Bouchard, Joe Bouchard, Alan Lanier, everybody at some point sang Blue Oyster Cult. So I think they thought it was important to bring a third voice in. That could be a little. Some people might find that a little, like, might feel a tiny bit taken aback because they're just not used to Richie's voice singing the Blue Oyster Cult.
His voice has more sort of like an AOR kind of like feel to me. Obviously, Tainted Blood it's sort of like a power ballad.
Right.
Those are his songs are the ones that have sort of really grown on me. I think I initially had sort of my guard up when I first heard the record, and I was like, who's this other vocalist? But as you listen to the record, it starts to make sense when you actually listen to it. I think they really wanted to capture that eclecticism from the earlier records, where you would have all the members contributing vocals, or almost all of them. And then they wanted to just add more variety. And I think that's what sets this album apart from the previous two Blue Oyster Cult records, right? Heaven Forbid and Curse of the Hidden Mirrors are good records, but I think this one is better than those two, because
there are a couple of things that were going on with Curse of the Hidden Mirror and especially Heaven Forbid that have sort of been ironed out here. We had a brief discussion about this earlier, but they weren't that, as nearly as old a band when they did Heaven Forbid, because that was over 20 years ago. And there was a very obvious decision on the part of the band, which I think worked, but some people didn't think worked, to make a more metal record. And if you listen to Heaven Forbid, it has an opening track called See You in Black that's like very heavy. And it has moments that are just more metal, but the peaks and valleys, it's a little more uneven. There's a few songs on it that are considerably weaker than the rest of the album. And it's sort of a band like trying to sort of do something a little bit more modern, but also deliver a legacy record. By the time we got to Curse of the Hidden Mirror, which I do honestly think is the weakest Blue Oyster Cult album, it's just, the songwriting isn't quite there. It's a little disjointed. And honestly, some of it sounds a little tired. And now it's 20 years later, and these bands are now in their final phase of their legacy periods. And I think they really made a very concerted effort to deliver a classic Blue Oyster Cult album, but also give us a little bit of a panorama. So there's a wide variety of styles on this record, and I think that's one of its strengths. It's a diverse record. It's also a long record. It's 14 tracks. What is the time? I think it's only like 55.
It's an hour long. Yeah.
It's an hour long, so it's not an outrageously long record by CD standards, but it's long, and there's a lot of variety packed into it. And some of the songs, one of the other songs we want to talk about is, I'll let John take over for a second, is Nightmare Epiphany, which is another highlight of the album, and I think goes all the way back to some of Buck's demos you were telling me earlier.
Yeah, so if you go to Buck's official website, he sells these sort of like archive CDs of like demos, and some songs made it onto or would go on to make it on to albums. For instance, Stone of Love off of Curse of the Hidden Mirrors, you can find that on one of these archive sets. And two of the songs on this album are from Buck's CD archives. The Nightmare Epiphany, which you just mentioned, and also Secret Road. And Nightmare Epiphany I really like because it's sort of like, it reminds me of that song off of Mirror's Moon Crazy. It's got sort of like a shuffle waltz kind of feel to it.
Yes, yes, that's the first thing I noticed about it. Yeah,
yeah, it's just a really fantastic song, and that's what I like. Can only echo what you said. I mean, I like the sort of variety on this record. I mean, really, the first three songs really give you the whole album in a microcosm, right?
Yeah.
That Was Me, which is a sort of heavy Eric Bloom.
very heavy, and also throws back to Heaven Forbid, which is like, let's begin the album with a bang. And
Yeah.
also, one of the things we all love about Blue Oyster Cult, a very sinister lyric about all sorts of bad things happening. If it's a woman crying in the window, it was me. And you know, there's a lot of my favorite kind of Eric Bloom sort of drama on this record, because you know he's such a lovable guy, but you know he definitely does sinister well. So that's a very cool opener. And then the second song is
Box in My Head, which is the Buck sort of like pop number, and
like,
then the third one is Painted Blood, right? So that's
Painted Blood. So we get all three of the vocalists, 1, 2, 3, bang.
Yeah, and it's sort of, that gives you a good sense of what the album is really going to do. It's going to go back and forth between heavy, light, and then a bit quirky at times. So it's a really strong record. I'm really fond of it.
Yeah.
So,
and I would say it's a very strong record. There's also a very good song called Secret Road, which comes up later. I like the closer Fight a lot. We get a really good mix of, honestly, what for me is the heart of BOC. We get a really nice mix of Buck and Bloom. And you know, I think and you know, we talked about Eric's voice sounding good on the record, but it's also worth noting that Buck sounds great, and he's just has one of those voices that doesn't really seem to change. So when you listen to Buck on this record, I mean, he really sounds like the Buck from Spectres. You know, I'm not hearing any deterioration in the tone. It's a Graham Bonnet situation. There's just some guys, they get older, and they manage to keep their chops. So that's all great. The album's very well produced. It sounds great. And I really like the symbolism. We aren't able to show you a physical copy of the album because we got a download, but it's got a very cool cover. A lot of people I know have actually picked this up on vinyl. If I have to say something, you know, slightly critical, I will say as a longer album, maybe it sags a little bit towards not the end, but there's maybe that sort of gray zone, you know, after the middle and before the last 3 or 4 songs. So there might be like 2 or 3. But
yeah, I think it starts strong. I think it finishes strong. So
starts strong and finishes strong.
Yeah, yes, for sure.
And that's pretty much it. So I really think that anyone that likes Blue Oyster Cult, if you like classic rock, you should definitely check this out. And it's available everywhere that you buy your music. So go check out your favorite outlet, whether it be Amazon. I think we're going to have a link. When you see the written review, there'll be a link for purchase right on the site at RSP. And that's all we really have to say. So really just check out the new Blue Oyster Cult. It's excellent. And check out Lock Shop Pop, which is our website. And have a great night.